So I want to talk about something that anyone who's been around the block with inquiry is familiar with. Anyone who's really dug into their identity or been on a retreat where you engaged in sustained meditation will be familiar with this. That is, when we really start to dig in, when we start to really push through the identity barriers with inquiry, it's pretty common that we come upon these experiences of disorientation. An analogy I'll use is if there's a bunch of mud at the bottom of a body of water, and you go down there and start stirring up the mud and digging and trying to find something in that mud, pretty quickly the water becomes opaque. And that can be disorienting. Your usual sense of what's up and what's down, what you are, who you are, what you're interested in, becomes just convoluted, confusing, disorienting, etc. Often the reaction to this will be something like, the thoughts are coming so fast, I don't even know what's real and what's not real, or what I should be doing, or I've lost sight of why I was inquiring in the first place. And then a lot of doubt typically comes as well, like, I'm probably not doing this right, or how can inquiry even be working when the mind is making so much noise that I can't even see what's in front of me? Well, the good news about this is that even in this state of disorientation, when the water gets murky and we're not sure which thoughts to grab onto and which to let go, the inquiry is still working. In fact, this is a sign that the process itself is working. So just know that nothing has gone wrong, that this is expected and pretty common. Now, you have to really evaluate your own level of comfort with how much disorientation you can handle. So I don't necessarily recommend pushing yourself into this disorientation endlessly to the point where you start to feel dysregulated or completely disassociated or disorganized in your behavior, etc. As I've mentioned before, and I mentioned in my book, if you have a history of psychosis or mental instability, be careful with this. Take it very slowly and work with somebody who knows you well and who you can get feedback from frequently. But short of that, you just have to develop a comfort level with how much of the disorientation you can handle before you just need to take a break, take some time off, relax, quit inquiring for a while. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It's okay completely. Now, I do want to say that before awakening, this disorientation is much more frequent and more, disorienting, more confusing. After awakening, strangely, we can find ourselves in these rather disorienting states, and yet something in us knows it's completely okay. There's something that's just not touched by that disorientation, by the thoughts, by the emotions. So it, in a sense, is a bit easier after awakening, although a lot more comes to the surface. We have more repressed material to work with. So there's a plus and minus to that. But regardless, the disorientation can become very intense at times. And it's okay to just relax. It's okay to take a break from meditation, especially if you're doing sustained meditation. Take a break from inquiry. Just go back to life as usual. Take a few days off. Take a week off. It's okay. Now, I do want to go a little more into why this happens and what's actually happening when we feel disoriented. So the first thing to know about this is that the disorientation itself really is just a side effect of what we're actually trying to accomplish, and that is we're disidentifying from the belief and essentially identity structures that are cognitively based. And when we do that, of course, the identity was structured in those thoughts and beliefs, and when they start to loosen up or come apart, it feels like our identity is loosening up or coming apart. It ultimately is not, but to the degree that we take ourselves to be those thoughts, beliefs, concepts, views, it really can feel like it. And again, it's disorienting. So understand that not only is this a side effect or an expected experience in this process, it's really the process working. It's what it feels like to disidentify, to let identity start to unravel. Now, there's a wide variation in how well people tolerate this. And a lot of it has to do with just how much contact you've come into with this information or this type of practice. If you've never experienced anything like this and you hear a video about non-duality or read a book like The Power of Now or my book, and you start experiencing openings and clarity, it can feel very good and incredibly freeing, but that's often followed by an intense experience coming to the surface of emotional repression, fear, the feeling of having to let go of your cognitive identity can feel really dysphoric at times. So sometimes when we have that first big hit of clarity, let's say, what follows it is a pretty uncomfortable period. Now, as we go through cycles of this again and again, we get more accustomed to it, we can handle it better, and we start to just feel like it's the way this goes. And even in deeper stage realization, it starts to be surprisingly tolerable. Even the most uncomfortable experiences that we've been running from our entire lives are suddenly discovered to be actually not that bad. They may be not the experience we would choose if given the choice, but really there's not much beyond the raw discomfort as a direct, immediate physical experience. The storylines that tell us we are going to be crushed by this, or we can't handle it, or it's going to go on forever, the fear thoughts, the psychological fear, that starts to drop away at some point. And this is when we really approach equanimity, which is a really beautiful shift in experience, a shift in our experiential insight and our identity, where identity gets disentangled from reaction, where identity gets disentangled from struggle, where identity gets disentangled from management. From there on, the disorientation I'm referring to is more on an energetic level rather than a personal level or an emotional level. Now, as we're disentangling identity from thoughts, from gross concepts, what often is experienced is a sort of thought storm. The thoughts are just raging on. Now, sometimes they have particular storylines that we're used to, our own story, our own narrative, the well-worn pathways of fear and doubt and so forth, self-doubt and all of it. And other times it feels like almost a random cascade of thoughts that are kind of going in various directions that don't make a lot of sense. And sometimes that can be even more disconcerting because the feeling of disorientation or the feeling of losing one's identity is there, but we don't even have the narrative to try to grab onto. We just feel like we don't know what to grab onto, and we feel like we're just grabbing in all directions, like we've just fallen off a cliff and we don't know what to grab onto. With this second type of experience, this sort of complete disorientation where there's not much even to grab onto, the mind's making a lot of noise, but none of it really makes any sense. Although this can be quite disconcerting, if you really just look into the beliefs surrounding the disorientation, it can be rectified pretty quickly often. And that is, see that there's a belief that says, I have to grab onto thoughts. I have to know what to think. I have to know what the thoughts are saying. I have to be able to pay attention to thoughts to know who I am or what I believe. When we recognize that these are just subtle thoughts or meta thoughts or thoughts about beliefs, and we let those go, often it can be surprising how much peace comes in, how much clarity comes in that moment, because we realize whatever we are, whatever this is, whatever this sense of I is or this sense of being is, it's just not subject to any thoughts. So you can just let that thought stream go. This is when you really start to approach awakening, by the way. When you're able to actually recognize all those thoughts, concepts, beliefs just aren't what you are. They really don't form anything. They're perhaps side effects of experience. They're kind of like clouds floating across the sky. When you experience this and you know, wow, I don't even have to know what I am. I don't have to define what I am through thought. That's the illusion. Whatever I am or whatever I'm not right now, it's just here. It's clear. It's obvious. Undeniable. And there's a resting there. We can just let the thoughts go, let the mind go, let it rattle on, or let it become quiet. It doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter what thought is here or not here. We just don't have to orient to thoughts and concepts. And we realize we never did have to. We just thought we had to. So that wrestling with thoughts, that struggling with thoughts that we've been doing our whole life to try to keep everything solid was completely unnecessary. What a wonderful revelation that is. So to briefly summarize, when you go through these periods of disorientation, first of all, remind yourself it's okay. It's just part of the process. The inquiry is still working. Something's actually happening underneath the surface, and that's why you're feeling the identity disentangling itself from thoughts and concepts. That's why you feel out of sorts or disoriented. It's okay. But start to trust yourself on how much you can handle at any given moment when it's time to just take a break and rest. Further, if you're approaching awakening, you haven't had a significant fundamental shift in identity, but you're starting to see through this illusion that you have to grab onto thoughts, beliefs, concepts to keep yourself afloat, to keep yourself oriented. When you see that that is the fundamental illusion, at least at the level of thought and consciousness, you have a great opportunity there, and that is to let go even further. Realize that I am disoriented is also a thought. I can't handle this is also a thought. Who will I be without thoughts, beliefs, or knowing how to orient myself? That's just another thought. You don't have to know what this experience of being here is, whether it's alive or dead, whether it's me or non-me, or self or no self, or I am, or anything. You don't need any of those labels, and yet here it is. It's just this, so simple. When you start to taste that, you start to touch into that, you're in a good place. Just keep orienting to it. Keep noticing those subtle thoughts trying to grab you, and don't grab them back. Let them just slide on by. Let them drift by. Let them come into being and go right back out of being. No thought touches this. No thought touches what you are. No thought touches this substanceless, indefinable being or knowingness that's here right now. So don't grab onto anything. Don't grasp. Don't try to define yourself. Don't try to define experience. Don't try to define your life. Don't try to define awakening. Don't try to define enlightenment. Don't grab on anything I've ever said, or anything anyone else has ever said, or anything you've ever thought, or any of your old experiences. They're all thoughts. Let them go. Let it all go right here, right now. That's the whole point.